During a concussion, the brain is in energy crisis. The chemicals in the brain are out of balance, and the cells are damaged, leading to an energy crisis. This energy crisis can cause symptoms and problems in the classroom. Dr. McAvoy, author of GetSchooledOnConcussions.com, will explain two common problems caused by this energy crisis: mental fatigue and processing speed.
So the way I always explain a concussion to my kids when I'm seeing them in the clinic or talking to parents or teachers is to say to them, a concussion is not a bruise and it's not a bleed. It's an inefficiency of the cells in the brain, and it's a temporary inefficiency of the cells in the brain. And so I always say to my kids, with a concussion, you're like an iPhone 4 instead of an iPhone 7. You're not broken. You're just not holding a charge long enough through the day. And if you want to make it through the day, you're going to have to refuel more often. The other way that I explain it to kids is you're like a car with a small gas tank. So you're not a broken car. You can get out of the garage. You can get around town. But you're not a race car right now either. And if you're going to get out of the garage and do some of your errands for the day, you just need to know where all the gas stations are. So you're going to drive, fill. And so I explain to my students that with a concussion, basically what's happening is that the cells that fuel the brain are just not holding a charge long enough. And so like the car with a small gas tank, when you start to run out, you start to run on empty, the indicator light comes on the dashboard. And that's the sign that you need to stop and refuel the tank. And then you're fine. You can keep on going. The symptoms that you flare with a concussion is the body's way of saying you're running on empty. So you might start out okay, and then midway through algebra, 10:30 in the morning, you begin to flare a headache, or you begin to get dizzy, or you begin to get irritable. The symptoms are telling you you're beginning to run on empty. It's nothing to panic about. You just simply refuel. You either put your head down for 5 minutes, or you get a drink of water, or you take your eyes off of the computer or off the book. You refuel, and then you can kind of keep on going. So it's very much a rehab model that we want to teach the kids, that you're going to have symptoms for 3 to 4 weeks, but you need to learn to manage them so that you can keep getting out of the garage and you can keep life going and you can keep doing things. Otherwise, it's going to be too debilitating. It's going to impact your life too much. And while you never feel 100% well or symptom-free with a concussion, we want the symptoms to be annoying and not debilitating. And that's the best way to keep things going for 3 to 4 weeks. Keep school going, keep social events going, and keep the frustration down. So with that kind of analogy, that is all about mental fatigue. It's how well you pace your energy so that you can keep things going, but you don't overrun the car, overtax the brain, and you get enough recovery.
It is important to remember that about 80% of students with a concussion will recover in about 3 to 4 weeks. However, during this time, they will need classroom adjustments. Classroom adjustments are immediate temporary intervention strategies that can be given to the student during their recovery from a concussion.
So probably the second most common thing you see with any kind of a brain injury, and specifically a concussion, is that after mental fatigue, it impacts processing speed. And what that does is it slows down the brain's efficiency of processing. So everything is moving at a slower pace. They may be able to do math problems, but they do it at a slower pace. It takes them longer and it's more work to do so. So all of their work or their speech, you can see it's just at a slower pace with more effort. And of course that then impacts kids at school, because school tends to go at a very fast pace. So if you look at your lesson plan and the student is able to learn that material and show you that with less problems or less work output, would that be enough to demonstrate mastery? Because they're learning it, but it's just taking them longer, and they might not be able to show you quite as efficiently how well or how quickly they're learning it. So I think the most important thing for our educators to understand is that if a child misses a few days of school in the very beginning of a concussion, they're going to be most symptomatic in the beginning of the concussion. So when they come back to school, welcome them back into school, recognize that their symptoms are going to be flaring more often and at higher rates as they enter back in at the end of that first week or into that second week. And the most important part at that time is just simply helping them to manage the symptoms. If they can read for 20 minutes and then need to take a 5-minute eye break, brain break, put their head down, it is better to keep them engaged at school, listening and learning and hearing the instruction by doing more pacing, so mental exertion and then mental rest more frequently through the day to keep their symptoms at bay. So keeping their symptoms at bay so you can keep them at school so that they can hear instruction, I think, is most important. And then the symptoms will decrease over the second and the third and the fourth week. And so whatever teachers can primarily do to keep them there so they can listen and learn. Because if they can hear instruction, then the teachers have the option and the choice to do things like remove the non-essential work or reduce the semi-essential work. But they can't do that if the student's, number one, not at school, or number two, at school but so symptomatic that they can't take in any of the instruction.